Hello. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Jenny, and today we're going to talk about serial killer Charles Cullen. Before we do that, I would like to invite you to like this video and subscribe to my channel. I promise I'm fun to hang out with. So, Netflix's #1 movie last week, The Good Nurse, about serial killer nurse Charles Cullen, was followed up with their #5 hit this week, a documentary called Capturing the Killer Nurse. So The Good Nurse is the fictionalized, based on a true story version about nurse Amy Laughlin, who worked side by side and befriended fellow nurse Charlie Cullen. So in the movie, Amy is portrayed by Jessica Chastain, who you'll know from a ton of movies, including The Help, Zero Dark 30, and Molly's Game. Charlie Cullen is portrayed by Eddie Redmayne. Again, tons of movies, including the Fantastic Beasts trilogy, Les Mis, and The Theory of Everything. So it's safe to say that Netflix came in hot, throwing some star power at this movie. Contrary to The Good Nurse, Capturing the Killer Nurse is the documentary version of the events. This includes the real Amy, as well as the police, other nurses, friends, etc., who knew or worked with Cullen. They talk you through what really happened. I first heard of killer nurse Charlie Cullen via a truly terrible show called Nurses Who Kill. This dramatized docuseries featured the story of one murderous nurse per episode. When I watched it, there were 3 seasons available on Netflix. I checked and it's not there anymore. 2 seasons are available to watch with ads on Freevee. I'm not sure what Freevee is. Is that the new IMDb TV thing? I don't really know. Anyway, it pops up on my Amazon Prime channel as an option, so go watch the series there. I will tell you though, it is very poorly done. I personally have a secret dream. It's not that secret, I tell everybody. My dream job is to be an actress on TV crime show reenactments because the acting is impressive stuff. Oscar quality. Very fitting with my skills, probably more likely. Anyway, I digress. The point is, that was the first time I'd heard of him. The second series I saw him in is an Oxygen series, docuseries called License to Kill. The quality of this series is significantly higher in my opinion. You can watch this series. It does cost extra, but you can watch it on Amazon, but I think it's worth the money. So other than these, I'd never heard of Charles Cullen. So when I say serial killer, like me, you probably think Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy. You might go with John Wayne Gacy or Ed Gein. But if I gave you a dozen guesses, you probably wouldn't come back with Charlie Cullen. So who is this guy? What makes him stand out? Where do I even start? So Cullen began his career in 1987 at St. Barnabas Medical Center in New Jersey. The first murders that Cullen confessed to occurred at this hospital in 1988. So over the course of the next 15 years, Cullen moved across 9 different hospitals and nursing homes in New Jersey and in Pennsylvania. In every move, he left a wake of questionable deaths behind him. In each case, there's evidence to suggest that the hospitals were suspicious of Cullen, but no one ever brought charges against him or even took steps to have his license reviewed. In many cases, he was even given a good reference. They helped him move forward onto the next hospital. Fast forward now into 2003 at Somerset Medical Center. They reached out to the Poison Control Center in New Jersey to say, we have a patient that has presented with elevated levels of digoxin, a heart medication. Other than a straight up overdose, what could cause that? Turns out there is only one thing that can cause elevated levels of digoxin, and that is an overdose of the drug. So police were contacted and an investigation was underway. Ultimately, Cullen eventually confessed to 40 murders over that 15-year period, of which 29 could be confirmed. Remember, many of these murders were old by the time the police were investigating, and in the cases of cremation, there'd be no body to exhume to check. So confirming these could be impossible. Keep in mind also that where it's ill and elderly patients being killed, it's likely these weren't marked as suspicious. So in those cases, there wouldn't have been autopsies done or tox screens conducted. The doctors would have simply signed them off as a natural death, and everyone went on with their lives, except for the victims. So these numbers are already extremely high. The average serial killer kills around 8 victims. So confirming 29 already sets Cullen apart as exceptional. However, because there is really no way to know when police went back and looked at all of the death records, they believe that the victim count could be as high as 400. Yes, you heard me right. 400. Over the course of 15 years, Cullen killed 400 completely vulnerable people who were laying sick or injured in a hospital bed, completely at his mercy. If you're asking yourself, how does that happen? You're asking the right question. And the answers are plentiful. First, and perhaps the easiest to understand, is who the victims were. Many serial killers start out, at least, by killing homeless people or sex workers. One of the main reasons for that is that those people are less likely to be missed, at least not right away. The police brush those off as high-risk lifestyle victims. Cullen employed the same general thought process. He targeted victims who were already sick or elderly, and once you've made it to the hospital, particularly if you're in the ICU, your health is probably not great. So it's easier for people to accept that these people died naturally, even if their deaths weren't really expected. Second, he, like many medical murderers, chose drugs that are difficult to detect or that aren't normally tested for in a tox screen. One of the most common drugs used by medical murderers is insulin, something that's naturally occurring in the human body. Additionally, the human body processes it quickly. So if the victim isn't tested right away, it may not ever show up in tests. Other common drugs I hear used are potassium chloride, Cullen's other drug of choice, which was digoxin, and in my opinion, one of the cruelest, a series of paralytic drugs, such as becuronium and rocuronium. Those paralyze the airway. So they're used to allow medical staff to insert breathing tubes. So when no breathing tube is inserted, though, a victim suffocates while they're ultimately otherwise wide awake. Third, and this is the big focus of the documentary Capturing the Killer Nurse, is that it's absolutely in the best interest of the hospital to sweep these incidents under the rug. Are you telling me that in 15 years and 9 hospitals that genuinely none of these other health systems were suspicious of Cullen's death rates? Seems pretty dang unlikely. It's bad enough to think that these hospitals shrugged and said, not my circus, not my monkeys. But that's compounded by knowing that they also gave him, in many cases, a positive reference, helping him get another job, helping him continue to kill. Even if you weren't prepared to outright accuse Cullen of deliberate murder, and I get it, they probably didn't have the proof they really needed, but can't you just say, his rates of keeping patients alive was unsatisfactory? So you might be thinking, well, this really is an isolated incident. And in many cases, you're right. I know many, many nurses who are wonderful people, and not only would they never harm a patient, but they would rather harm themselves physically, mentally, or emotionally trying to help others. However, there are reasons that shows like License to Kill and Nurses Who Kill exist. License to Kill has 20 different episodes across 2 seasons. Nurses Who Kill has 31 episodes across 3 seasons. I also suspect that Netflix made this movie and documentary as a direct response to the success Peacock saw with their 2021 series and documentary, Dr. Death. That was based on the completely incompetent neurosurgeon, Christopher Dunch. Not included any of these series I mentioned before is a British doctor who also carries the moniker Dr. Death. Dr. Harold Shipman was arrested in 1998. He was a doctor in a small town for 23 years, and he is suspected of killing as many as 250 patients. All right, so there's your quick introduction to medical murder. I'm going to try to rein this in here because I warn you, I could literally talk about this all day, and you probably don't want to stay that long. So let's swing back to actually talking about the movie and the documentary. I should add here that both the movie and the documentary are based on the book also called The Good Nurse by Charles Graeber. I haven't read it yet, but it is on my Amazon wish list now. As I mentioned, I did already have a bit of a background on Colin, but still I decided to start with the documentary before watching the movie. And I'm really glad that I did. Something important to know is that all of these focus on the story of Amy Loughran, much more so than they actually or directly focus on Colin or even on the victims. This is really Amy's story, and if the portrayals are accurate, she deserves to have her story told. This is a woman who put her own life, health, career, even her family at risk to help the police catch a killer. A man no one else wanted to confront, and a man that she considered a good friend. The documentary features numerous first-hand interviews, and they are particularly ruthless on the portrayal of the hospital's willingness to help. The hospital administration claims to have cooperated fully, but the police and Amy tell a pretty different story. After watching Dr. Death and seeing how the hospitals acted in those cases, I'm pretty clearly on the side of the police and Amy on this one. I think their policy was basically cover your ass and admit nothing. Much of this is done under the guise of patient confidentiality, but I think it's safe to say there are ways to work around that, particularly when patient safety is involved. And patient safety should always outweigh confidentiality. So when it came time to watch the actual movie, I don't know, maybe my expectations of Chastain and Redmayne were just too high. Don't get me wrong, they did a perfectly good job. Chastain in particular carries the movie. But after having seen both of these leads in so many other great and very high budget roles, this felt a little beneath them. Peacock's Dr. Death carried an equally heavy-hitting cast with Joshua Jackson, Christian Slater, and Alec Baldwin starring, and I never felt that they were being done a disservice. In this movie, I felt like Redmayne in particular was severely underutilized. He really only has one scene that even features him, and that's near the end when he's being interviewed by the police. Otherwise, he just does a lot of skulking around in the background. I also have the same complaint about this as I had about the Jeffrey Dahmer biopic that Netflix released recently, and that is that they change parts of the story to up the drama. 400 murders, drama enough. One of the things that annoyed me the most is that in the documentary, the catalyst for the original murder charge was an elderly male victim who made his living as a reverend. Okay, innocent victim. In the movie, they changed that to a young female victim, carrying that through to the point where the police are accusing Cullen of only killing women. Like, that's how far they're taking this killing women thing. They're really diminishing him to the stereotype victim where he just wants to kill his mother or his ex-wife. Dude, why? I think they were just trying to play up victim sympathy, but especially after having seen the documentary where his sister, where the victim's sister was interviewed, I was just confused and frankly offended. That man did not deserve to die because he was elderly, male, and childless. And we shouldn't feel worse because the portrayed victim was a young mother. That just felt like a plot change that was put forth by a young, inexperienced writer that they threw out, and for some reason, everybody ran with it. It's not cool. Between the two, I would definitely recommend Capturing the Killer Nurse over The Good Nurse. Watch the documentary. Learn the real story, at least as it's told from Amy and the police. But remember, this whole thing is about stopping Cullen. It's not about Cullen himself. But even though I thought The Good Nurse was a little lackluster, it's still worth watching. When you're done watching that, hop over to Peacock and watch Dr. Death. It was better in pretty much every way, though I will say it was a bit more gruesome. It's also a series, so it's a bigger time commitment. So there you go. That's what I think. Let me know in the comments if you watched the movies and what did you think. Also, do you think the hospitals should have done more to stop Cullen? Because I sure do. So that's all for me today. Please remember to like and subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, have fun, be safe, and don't murder anyone.